Hey guys, how's it going? It is Kara here with another Infinite Magicraid video. And in today's video, I want to highlight a particular epic that happens to be on this raid up right now that I actually made a mistake on earlier and crushed this character, but I think she's actually amazing and worth considering for a lot of reasons. And so when it comes to raid ups, especially these 10x ones here, I'm not going to ever recommend to pull whether or not, I don't care how good the characters are. It's just these raid ups, you never know what you're going to get. These are not guaranteed, let alone the character you actually want with these. And I'm not going to sit here and try to justify which characters you should pull, which ones you shouldn't, stuff like that when it comes to this. It's just too random to really, guarantee this. And then it matters on your account, all that stuff. So it's just, I'm never going to recommend to pull or not to pull. But I will talk about some of the characters and what my thoughts on them are. And I think this epic here in Visley is awesome. I think this is one of the best characters, or one of the best epic characters you can get. And the way I ended up finding out about this character, even going on my radar, because I was just using her as food. I was just crushing her into other characters. But what really made me clue in and really read her kit was in Tower Mark here, on the red mark, I pushed all the way to floor 30. And this is very difficult content. Obviously, I haven't cleared it yet. But I looked at the boss guide and the hero popularity, and I noticed that she's 50% usage. So the people that are clearing this are massive whales that have access to the best characters in the game. Definitely not that many people, but 50% of the time, people are using this character. I'm like, okay, epic character, I would always crush. What makes her so good? And coming from Raid, this is a very powerful effect. It's like a no-brainer pick to use, but in this game it's not guaranteed, so I think that's why she's kind of overlooked. But it's her ultimate here. So 100% attack damage to all enemies with a 70% chance to reduce target's attack by 40%. One issue with this is that it's not 100% guaranteed. So there's no such thing in this game that 100% of the time you're going to be able to land an attack down 2 on all enemies. That just doesn't exist. But you can come close here in a 70% chance. So this right here is so good, even without the exclusive 3, specifically for progression. And I think let's get to the rest of her kit here because she's very similar to Space. And I'll talk about the pros and cons between those two characters here. So the passive here is 30% chance to reduce the effect res, which is kind of nice, especially when you're kind of strapped for gear in progression, but it's really not the biggest deal. The big thing is definitely her A2, where it increases speed by 20% for all allies for 2 turns. And meanwhile, increases the crit rate for the ally with the highest attack for 2 turns. So for progressing, this can actually be awesome because crit rate is such a hard thing to get, and it's guaranteed for the person with the highest attack. So you can target it to your actual carry there. Very good combo here for the A2. And then lastly, just does a speed reduction. So we have speed reduction, we have speed boosting AoE, an attack reduction as an AoE. And that's all without any exclusives on her. So already right there, the way I'm seeing her used is helping you push through campaign and actually surviving, because a 40% attack reduction is going to make survival so big. And I've tested it because she's not A5 yet. So for all the stuff I'm trying to push, it's very tough to use her, but I was able to beat Rum 28 with her. I've already been able to beat this, but I used her on my team and beat Rum 8. And where she was clutch is she can reduce the attack on round 2. And then she reduced the attack of the boss and the 2 side minions right before she died on A3 or on round 3, and that was super clutch, and I think that saved the run because you don't have access to buffs. Hey guys, a future Kyra here after actually leveling her up a little bit more. So now I have her 140, and a pretty big boost when it comes to stats, so she's actually surviving a bit more. Also a big thing about 140 is the emblems here, where you can get these other ones that are a little bit more survivable here down in the defense tree. I took her in and I wanted to see how far I could push in things. And so what I was able to do that I think is really cool about her, and I think she's performing as good, if not way better than I was expecting. I'm using her essentially in place of Space. In Mark Tower I can't, but I can literally auto stage 29 now because of her, which I think is sick. I pushed a lot of progression in dungeons. So like what I think is going on here and why I think I like her a little bit more than Space in a lot of these situations is that the damage when it comes to these dungeons, even if I'm full health, like Space will heal me up and make sure I'm 100%. But what happens is I still could get one shot. Like for example, in Mark Tower 30, I could be full health, but if I get crit, I'm one shot. And for example, my Catherine died against the boss. But if he had the 40% attack reduction, even when I'm full health, I can't really die there. So that is one of the benefits there. So I was able to beat stage 28 here with Rum. I was able to do that with Space anyway, but The ones that I think are really solid that were new progress for me was beating stage 25 here in Growlin. I haven't been able to do that. I was able to do that with putting in Visley here over space, and because they're very similar characters, but I think the extra crit, the speed, and the attack down, I'm liking a little bit more than space. And especially if you can boost up the speed of your actual characters about as high as the boss. So I try to get people in that 2000 range. My damage dealers are not. For example, my Catherine here is at 2147, and then also my Whim is fast too at 2128, whereas my damage dealers here in Sigmund and in Hoff are not. They're significantly slower, but I care more about their survivability. And then I throw in Visley here, who would be faster if I could get her to Ascended 5, because you would get so you get the speed from the emblems, and then also I would get the speed from the equipment down here at rank 5 there. So there's a lot more speed she can get, but that is the reason why she's a little slower. Because I have these people faster, it doesn't take much speed boosting or turn meter boosting for me to really care about keeping up with the boss. If you're trying to progress and you're significantly slower, then maybe space would be a little better in some situations. But I think for the most part, I would prefer the attack reduction, and then you have the speed up here, and then you also get some extra damage there too, with the extra crit rate up on your highest damage dealer. So that's what I really like about her over space, where space is just manipulating the turn meter. Space is still incredible for like arena and stuff, and she's still probably going to be slotted in a lot of situations in PvE. But the fact that Visley is like, I'm considering using her over space, I think really highlights just how good I think Visley is. They do a ton of damage. So I think she's super good for most people, in my opinion, is going to be in campaign here. She's going to be boosting your speed up, and then she's going to be reducing the attack of the enemy waves. And since there's 5 enemies, you're going to have a very good chance of landing it on most of them. And then what you could do is, if it didn't land on one, you just target that character. And I think some of the campaign maps that are going to be really clutch here, let me see if it's on this one. Yeah, these ones are really difficult. So the Eric ones with the moves, potentially, even though I believe, let me see if the moves are based on defense. So the Moo here is calculated off his defense here. You can check this. So this is not going to reduce his damage, because the issue with this is not necessarily the Moo, but it's 2 moves. Because what happens is then one applies burn and then the other one applies burn, and then it does 1 billion damage because everyone in Hell difficulty has a ton of defense. So then these modifiers, when you can proc it at 300%, just does 1 billion damage. But what really sets it over the edge is them having Eric on here too. So if they have that character, with the moves, at least you're reducing his damage. There's still a lot of RNG, and when I was clearing it, I would have to reset the runs, because you never know if something's going to resist. You never know how Eric's going to pop off, stuff like that. But also one where there's a ton of actual attack damage characters would be in the final stages here. And I think she can actually be clutch, because not only is she doing the attack down, but then she does speed up. So the direct thing that she doesn't have any healing, which is kind of a bummer when people are looking at, I need someone that's survivable. But then she's basically providing really useful things, if not more useful things than Space is. Because what Space is doing, yes, she has the heal here and she's giving turn meter, but then she's giving speed up here and 1 speed reduction. So basically the whole point of this is to be able to reduce attack and be able to heal and go before the enemy. But she's doing the same thing in a different way, where she's going to be doing the increases the speed on all allies and getting crit rate, and then also doing the attack down. So something very similar. In my opinion, in some situations a little bit better, because she's actually kind of hedging her bets here. She's just blatantly reducing the attack of the enemies, and then what she's doing is she's also increasing the crit of your attacker, because what happens with Space a ton of the time is that you're taking all these turns, you're already too safe. You're already taking too many turns. And then especially in campaign, you're just wasting time here, and you're going to really use all the turns out of your 100 turns you have here to be able to actually get this 3-star. So having that combination there is nice. And then also, instead of just being healed up and taking the damage, I think in this game the damage is way too great by a lot of enemies. So having the attack down actually allows you to survive in this game, versus trying to just stay topped up. Because sometimes I'll die through a shield and stuff like that, but if you can reduce their attack before they go, that's awesome. And then lastly, another reason why I think attack up's so good is because debuffs are always better than buffs in my opinion, because if you're taking a lot of turns and you're actually going really fast, you might outpace your own buffs. So your buffs fall off, and then they just attack you straight up and you're dead. Whereas with a debuff, you can rely on the fact that unless they cleanse it, they're going to have that debuff regardless of how many turns you take. So on a dungeon, for example, when you're wanting to take a ton of turns because you have 300 instead of that 100 for campaign, it's fantastic. And then lastly, this brings me back to really hard content here on floor 30 of the Tower of Mark here. And I think the main reason why she's used is because all the reasons we mentioned, the speed up is great, the attack down is great, but when you start to, this is where exclusiving her really matters, because now you're facing a Catherine and a Serena. So Catherine is going to be constantly buffing the enemy boss and Serena. So what she's going to do as exclusive 3 here is she's going to remove one random buff when reducing the target's attack successfully. So you have that extra benefit there of being able to remove the counterattack or being able to remove the shield and reduce the attack there. So not going to work every time, but in the situations where you'd use her, you either have a lot of targets, so the odds of you hitting at least 2 or maybe 3, fantastic. And then in Tower of Mark, you're trying to push content, you have unlimited attempts. If you have the attempt, you don't have to worry about ever running out of the key. You just get to try it again. So if you really need it to land, if you're really trying to push it, at least you can use her. And if you mess up, all you got to do is try again. So I think this is an amazing epic character. I didn't have her. I ended up crushing her and using her as food, but I think she's an absolute top tier epic that is worth considering pulling. And then just real quickly here, I really like 3 of these characters here. 2 of them are niche. I think these 2 in Journia and Alan, kind of niche, but Megan, Alec, and Seville are actually good legendaries. So not the best raid up to pull on. Like me personally, I'm really excited about this because you have Bissidin, you have Visley, and then Fagan's actually kind of good. Even this guy's kind of good too. Not great, but he's okay. And then you have 3 good legendaries, but they're not like super game changers. But again, I would never, recommend a pull. That's way too subjective. But I do like the characters here, especially this epic, because she's reasonable. You can get a couple copies of her on average without having to spend too many shards, unless you're just super unlucky. And she could be pretty useful, because I think she's going to be useful early to mid game. Like if I could do this again and I had access to her, I'd probably throw her on the team and see just how good she is to try to push me through some content there. So, all right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. And with that, guys, I am out of here. Peace.